I grew up outside, doing everything in it and loving it every day. My grandpa taught me almost everything I know about the outdoors. It also set an example of what it looks like to be a true man of God. He changed my life. He shared God's creation with me, and it's been the greatest thing in my life, a passion. I would love to do the same thing and show as many as possible the beauty and wonder of God's true untouched creation. I know it changed my life, and I want to light that same path for other people. It would mean so much to me if I could share my love, knowledge, and appreciation for the great outdoors. We called him Grandpa Goose. He was the toughest, burly-looking man, but also the most patient, humble, kind-hearted man I've ever known. We used to spend a lot of time together, hunting, fishing, camping. Every once in a while, you'd catch us inside, either watching the Outdoorsman's channel or piecing together a massive puzzle. I'd go over to his house, and sometimes we'd be gone half a day or so. Sometimes we'd disappear, just him and I into the mountains for a few days, even up to a week sometimes. While normal parents would be worried if they didn't hear from their child in 4 to 5 days, mine weren't, because they trusted no man more than him with me. Our times together looked something a little like this. At dawn one midsummer morning, I was dropped off at Grandpa's house, duffel in hand, and helped him load the truck. This strong, 6-foot man methodically loaded the pickup with all of our camping and fishing gear, our food, of course some donuts, and lots of coffee. It was a well-loved pickup, a silver F-150. Many stories tell the scratches into the sides. He didn't have an agenda, just time. His presence in pursuit of me was all that was needed. It was onto the quiet, tree-shaded shores of Lake John. Grandpa loved the uncommon seclusion, a place just for me, him, and God, where we could truly enjoy each other. In the early morning, Grandpa set off on his morning walk and enjoyed that first cup of coffee. I don't really know what he did on these morning walks, but he always made it his ritual to be alone with the cool mornings, maybe thinking about God, maybe thinking about me, maybe thinking about where the fish were going to be that day. We always slept in the back of his pickup, and I loved stretching out, waiting for his return, along with the plan for the day. This particular morning, while he was off in the woods, I decided to sneak out of the truck shell and get an early start to the day. I spotted a ground squirrel across the road about 20 yards away. I grabbed the little bow and arrow that my grandpa had gifted me about a year before, sighted up on the little animal, released the arrow, and struck the squirrel. Grandpa was an extraordinary hunter, so I proudly showed him my first kill with a bow, and he was real proud of me, as he used to bow hunt grizzly bear and all sorts of other big game animals in Alaska. What made him so special to me was he would take me out to the woods, somewhere with the intention of teaching me something. It wasn't formal. There was no formula. It was time together. I learned by watching him. He didn't say much on these trips. He didn't need to. I closely observed and followed his lead. It was time to get going down to the water. We both smiled at each other because we knew what time it was. Fishing time. Rainbow trout were the target, and by this time, we had gotten the techniques down at Lake John down to a science. We were professionals, confident that we'd have a fun day full of fish. Although we were looking to catch 15, 20 fish a day, we were looking for just a few of the bigger ones to cook on the fire for our next meal. Grandpa and I sat back, watching the lines to about midday, telling little jokes and laughing with each other. Soon enough, we'd see people from all over the lake come closer to us and see if they could figure out our secret and why we were catching all the fish. There was no hurry. Grandpa knew this was the spot, and we were going to get our catch. It was us together that mattered. Grandpa Goose leadership was not about the words. It was through his actions, through his patience and joy. He knew it was all about being present, being engaged, being joyful, delighted in the one you're with. That was what we enjoyed the most, just spending quality time together in God's beautiful creation. Whether it was hunting, fishing, or putting a puzzle together, it didn't matter. It was all about the fact that we were together. That was just one of the thousands of stories I have with Grandpa Goose, one small puzzle piece of our times together. He is the man who introduced me to the outdoors. He is the man who created my love for the outdoors. He truly changed my life, and there's hardly a day that goes by when I don't think about him and the awesome times we had together. While these are all incredible, valuable things that I'll never forget, the greatest thing he ever gave me was an example of a true man of God. Humble, patient, loving, and caring. The best example I could have ever asked for. While I contain only a fraction of the virtues he once had, and most likely will never be the man he once was, it's always something I can strive for. The very beginning to my Capstone experience was off to a great start. The senior class spent 3 days together in Gunnison, Colorado. During these times, we played games together, cooked together, ate together, and even attempted to form an a cappella group together. Although these were all essential parts of the trip, my favorite part was the solo. During the solo, we spent 8 hours in the wilderness alone with only a journal, a Bible, an orange, and a few pieces of beef jerky. We were allowed one comfort item. I chose a hammock. However, we were not allowed any kind of technology or additional items. Although to some, this may sound miserable. Some might even say it was miserable. I enjoyed every second of it. I was given 8 hours to spend in God's creation, the very place I experienced Him the most. During this time, I focused mostly on John 12:7-10, which states, "But ask the animals, and they will teach you, or the birds in the sky, and they will tell you, or speak to the earth, and it will teach you, or let the fish in the sea inform you. Which of all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In His hand is the life of every creature, and the breath of all mankind." I look at this verse in this way. God has created the earth for us so that we may learn more about Him through the birds, animals, and fish. God has created the earth for us, so why wouldn't we spend time in it? Don't you think you could experience God in some pretty cool ways through His creation? As I reflected during the solo, I thought to myself many things. Where did my love for the outdoors come from? What do the outdoors mean to me? As I processed and answered myself, and remembered all the thousands of stories I had with Grandpa Goose, I came to a conclusion that I was going to base my capstone off of the outdoors. In November, Cami Chisholm and I had the opportunity to go on a hike with Mr. Wall and learn a little bit of what it's like to be a leader in God's creation. It was an incredible experience, and I learned far more than I ever thought I would. It wasn't quite what I was expecting, but as Mr. Wall, Cami, and I trekked around the third Flatiron, there was something so much more rich. We were able to laugh, tell stories, and simply talk about life. We were able to have a small look of what it looks like to lead in the outdoors. Mr. Wall explained some of his favorite things to talk about when leading a group through the outdoors: needs, goals, successes, and failures. It is not only important to discuss one's needs for a certain trip or in that stage of their life, but also to discover the needs to meet those needs. It is necessary to identify the problem before you can attempt to fix it. Goals are also something that can be talked about on a small or a larger scale. While goals can be small, such as simply getting to the top of a hike, goals can be large. Goals can be applied to any category of life. Goals are important to talk about and to practice because everything you do should be for a purpose, whatever that may be. Without goals, it is impossible to become better. And shouldn't we be striving for the best possible versions of ourselves? Ted Turner, an American media mogul and philanthropist, once said, "You should set goals beyond reach so you always have something to live for." How can we achieve our dreams if we don't know what we want in life? Setting goals is a necessity for achieving the ultimate question of, what do you want? Another thing that Mr. Wall mentioned as one of his favorites to talk about when leading through the outdoors is successes and failures. Talking about successes and failures are a great community builder and group exercise that also create lasting memories, such as Cami Chisholm bouncing down the steps of a ladder in a cartoon-like way. Discovering personal successes and failures also return back to needs and give a further understanding of what one needs. Mr. Wall not only talked about successes and failures, but also defining them. Defining personal successes and failures are essential for leading an outdoor adventure group. Understanding the fine line between the two is great to talk about for learning more about yourself or the group you may be leading. Every main point that he covered ultimately returned to the senior seminar question of, what do you want? To be honest, first semester, I didn't get a whole lot from Capstone. A former student from Front Range once told me, "Choose something you love, and you'll enjoy Capstone and learn a lot." I did choose something that I loved, and I hadn't really gotten anything from it. I discovered flaws within myself, but I hardly learned anything new about the outdoors itself. I said to myself that I didn't get what I was looking for. I then stepped back and asked myself, what am I looking for? It was a question that I didn't have an answer to. And from that point on, I decided that I first need to discover what it is that I'm looking for. And second, that I should focus less on the grade, less on completing the assignment, and more on what I was looking for. I read a book read a book called Christian Outdoor Leadership, written by Ashley Denton. He has been involved in student ministry and outdoor leadership for over 25 years, which broadened his knowledge to a global perspective. He has a doctorate in missions and cross-cultural studies from Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture from University of Arizona, and a Master's in Theology from Fuller Theological Seminary. Christian Outdoor Leadership was said to be a must-read for anyone who loves the outdoors and desires to grow in their relationship with Christ through solitude or adventure in the outdoors. It is also described to be the first of its kind, as it offers a relevant, relatable approach into the ideas of leadership development, evangelism, discipleship, and spiritual formation through outdoor adventure. Denton primarily focuses on the large mountain scripture, where Jesus taught, discipled, and spent time outdoors. I quickly learned that over 50% of Jesus' teachings occurred outside, because he loved to use natural analogies and parables which were made possible through the outdoors. Denton understands the craziness and complexity of life and how it is physically, spiritually, and emotionally draining. People today are constantly searching to be freed from the busyness of life. Through this book, he shows how to find more peace and productivity by imitating Jesus Christ's rhythm of retreat. It was a great book which contained lots of rich information on the development of one's personal self, as well as our relationship with Christ. I also had the opportunity to meet with Gil McCormick, an extremely wise man of God who has led countless expeditions and adventures throughout the course of his life. In our meeting, we were able to have such rich conversations about the outdoors itself, my capstone, and trying to figure out what it was that I wanted from Capstone. We exchanged several stories about our personal experiences, the people we've met, and so much more. We were discussing the question of why the outdoors matters. He told me there isn't a secret formula for one to figure out why the outdoors matters to them. It's different for everyone. He told me, "You have something unique. A lot of people have experiences in the outdoors, but yours is different. Why? Because it's your story. You need to tell that story." So I attempted to share a small bit of that through the story earlier with Grandpa Goose. This meeting was really awesome as it really opened my eyes towards what I wanted out of Capstone. Just after spring break, I had the incredible opportunity to lead a few boys on a hike, Ian and Clayton. Unfortunately, about a week before our hike, Clayton broke both of his wrists playing basketball. Unfortunately, I decided to change locations of the hike as I didn't want any more injuries to occur or an angry parent on my back. When I did this, all sorts of thoughts started coming to my head. What if it's a terrible hike? What if the boys don't have fun? And got so caught up simply in the location of the hike. However, as we hiked around, climbed around the rocks, we told stories, we laughed, and we just talked about life. I quickly realized that the location of the hike didn't matter. It was the fact that we were spending time together, just as it was with Grandpa Goose. Through this, I discovered that the outdoors naturally create bonds. I started the hike not knowing a single thing about either one of these kids, and walked back to the truck feeling like we had a sturdy, long-lasting relationship with each other. It wasn't until after reading Christian Outdoor Leadership, meeting with Gil McCormick, and taking some boys on a hike that I figured out what it was that I was looking for, what outdoor leadership even is. I discovered that there isn't a definition or formula for outdoor leadership. It's whatever you want it to be. It's not about simply teaching your group a lesson or devotion in the outdoors. It's about the relationships that are formed, the community which cultivates from it, the smiles, the laughter, just spending time with each other, just being outdoors and escaping from the busyness of life. Everything that I was looking for was already within me, within my personal story, within my relationship with Grandpa Goose. If I were to leave you guys with one thing, it would be this. Take advantage of the gift that God has given us. Create your relationships. Laugh. Just spend time together in God's beautiful creation. It doesn't matter what it is. Just go and get outside.